Matt James's journey as The Bachelor is almost over, and we're breaking down the latest promo for clues of what's to come. Hey guys, welcome back to another shared news from home. After an insane season on and off screen, we are truly approaching the end of Matt's journey as The Bachelor. We're going to talk about this latest promo, but before we get started, if you're new here, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell so you don't miss out on any future videos. As always, I'm your host, Fiona Zaring, and today I'm joined by the lovely Gabby Ganta and Hibba Berry. You guys, the end is near. Let's just dive into these clips because there is a lot to talk about. So, as we all know, Matt's journey is about to continue with Fantasy Suites.
Next week, Matt's journey to find love continues.
These women are incredible.
So we have our final three and we are heading into our fantasy suites. Gabby, how are you feeling? What are you expecting to come?
Well, I'm expecting a lot of kissing just in the first few seconds of this clip. That's what we got. I'm not surprised though, of course, but I'm also expecting just amazing dates to come from these three women because they are such great catches for Matt. I think we have an awesome top three, and I think their connections are going to progress so much that Matt is going to be in trouble at the end of it because he's not going to know what to do.
Yeah, you know what? It's crazy because we're already here. The season is almost wrapping up, and with Fantasy Suites approaching, that kind of means the home stretch. We're almost there for that big final rose moment. It kind of seems like, yes, the top three, they're very solid, as we've definitely seen in the past seasons, and it's going to be a tough one for Matt to make as far as a decision. So we'll definitely have to keep watching and stay tuned.
Yes, I couldn't agree with you more. It is going to be a very difficult decision, especially if he finds himself in love with all three women, which it looks like he might be.
I'm about to make one of the most important decisions in my life.
I will tell you that I am in love with you.
To find love,
I'm head over heels for you.
to find a wife.
I am so in love with you.
So we certainly know that the women are in love with Matt. It is really, really difficult at this stage of the game, I think, to juggle the multiple relationships, the multiple emotions, especially if the connections are like truly real, which I feel like all of these are. I mean, I'm totally sold on his connection with all of these women. What about you, Heba?
Oh, for sure. And I'm still so impressed that Michelle is still there. She was one of the new girls to come in the middle. I think there were, I believe, 3 weeks in. So I'm so happy that she made it to the final three. And again, their connection just cannot question it. The chemistry is off the charts. It was interesting because I believe we haven't seen Matt say he loves any of the girls. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe he hasn't said that. So it's interesting to see the girls, saying all these feelings and saying, that big L word. So it'll be interesting to see, in the following scenes while we watch if Matt will kind of reciprocate and say those words back to each girl. Maybe not. We'll have to wait and see, of course. But I think the connections are so solid, which is going to make the final selection even harder to make, especially for Matt. But yeah, it's going to be a little bit of a nail biter. Of course, we all have our speculation of who gets the final rose, but until we see it, we never know until we get that confirmation. So we'll all definitely be watching.
Yeah, I think Matt has said he's falling for Rachael. I don't think he said it for any of the other girls. And then Rachael has definitely said she's falling or is in love with Matt already. So it is interesting to see, though, here in this promo that Michelle and Brie are on that level too. And the fact that we're getting that next week, right? Because there's still 2 more weeks when there's three of them, and then it gets down to the two final women. So I don't know. It's going to be crazy. I think it was really interesting to see during the Women Tell All this week how real connections were. Like, I think Katie was the one who was saying, like, she was blocking out everyone else in the room. So she thought her and Matt's relationship was like amazing, like on fire, all of this stuff. And then when she was watching back, she was saying, oh, like he was actually really far along with Michelle and like other people. So I think these girls, their connections, they personally think it's probably so strong, and they are because we're in the home stretch here, but it's going to be tough. I think we're going to have to really pay attention to all of Matt's nuances, the things he says, his facial expressions, to really be able to tell what he's feeling.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. It's going to be the little moments that are going to give us the real clues as we, get through fantasy suites. Obviously, the goal here is for Matt to end up engaged. It's not a guarantee. He can, of course, choose to not get down on one knee, but there is an engagement ring at play. So let's take a look at the ring.
To leave this thing engaged, I don't know what I'm gonna do.
So obviously we see him holding a ring there, but what he's saying isn't like, I'm so excited to propose. So what do you make of this clip, Gabby?
It's very interesting because it always seems like these people who sign up to be engaged on the show, it comes down to the wire and then they're having second thoughts, which is, of course, acceptable and understandable because it's a huge life decision. But at the same time, you would think that it would be something more exciting rather than scary. So I'm not sure where Matt's head's at with this, but I think if it was the perfect girl and he was ready, then it would be more of that excitement rather than fear. But it might just be a hurdle he has to get over next week, jumping into the final week when he really has to make the decision. But I don't know. We'll have to see.
I think nerves are so common in this situation, especially at this stage. You might be getting cold feet. You might be second guessing yourself if these three are the one, or if these three are, can there potentially be a wife out of this kind of scenario? So I think the nerves are very common and not surprising. But for him to say, I don't know if there's going to be an engagement at the end of this, that's a pretty big statement. Again, I don't know if, again, it's the Bachelor producers, trying to like whisper things in his ear or whatnot. To kind of get him second guessing himself. But I think in this promo, it's kind of typical to see, again, that second guessing, that questioning, just to ramp up some more kind of like more of a cliffhanger, more suspense leading up to the end of the season. But I think he's going to make a decision. I mean, that ring is beautiful. I don't think I've ever seen a ring like that. It's so unique. So I think him wanting to give such a unique ring will be even more meaningful to whoever he chooses, and if he even chooses anyone. I mean, we're just assuming. So again, we just got to wait till we get that confirmation. There's a lot of speculation of who it will be, but just got to wait and see for sure with our own eyes.
Totally. I mean, you mentioned that ring. It is absolutely stunning. We know someone's getting, in theory, a huge diamond. But Gabby, do you approve? Are we on board with this ring?
Yeah, it's very intricate and regal, I feel like. Is there even like a colored diamond in the middle? That's super cool.
You are so right. It could be. It is definitely a gorgeous ring, and hopefully somebody will be wearing it. And hopefully, contrary to what maybe have all heard, he does get some sort of a happy ending. Let's dive into what we're maybe going to be seeing with Brie, because we know she is excited to be spending some more time with Matt.
Don't look down.
This week is Fantasy Suites, and I'm really excited to get to know Matt in a more intimate setting.
There are fireworks. Obviously, things are going to get cozy. This is screaming a successful fantasy suite to me. What are your thoughts, Heba?
I am just so happy that these are actually suites compared to Tasha's season. I mean, those poor guys, like, I think Ivan got like a trailer, and then Zach got somewhat of like a nice looking suite, but these girls are getting proper treatment. So I'm very happy about that. I mean, production, I think, saved money with Tasha's season, so they definitely splurged on these girls. But yeah, I mean, it definitely looks like, they're having a great time. And again, fantasy suites are definitely the stage where you intimately get to know one another. Of course, that connection is already established throughout the season, but now it's more of like the intimate connection. And it definitely, takes two to, of course, secure this relationship and kind of validate, like, okay, this is my person. So I think this is a vital part of the show. Can be a little bit cringy and uncomfortable to watch sometimes, because you realize like there's a full camera crew in this room right here on this freeze frame, on this paused shot right here, and you just kind of forget about that, and you're like, should I even be in this room? Should I be even watching or witnessing these conversations? So it's weird for us to watch, but again, so crucial in these relationships. And yeah, we'll just have to see how this will play out.
I agree. I think this is going to be a fun date for Brie. And it looks like they're just, hanging out in their hotel room, having fun, or wherever they're, staying in the big Nemacolin resort of it all. But I really think that this time, especially with fantasy suites, not only is it intimate and cozy and all those things, but it's also just extra time that they get to spend with each other, because when you're considering getting engaged to someone, and all you've had is like dates where you spend the full day together. Like, yeah, it's the full day, but it's not really like overnight or extended hours or just longer periods of time to get to know each other. And I remember back in Tasha's season with Ivan, that was really telling because they talked all night and they talked about deeper topics and they found out where, they weren't on the same page. So I think that is going to be the same case for Matt here.
Yeah, no, it's so important. I mean, just the idea that they haven't had any uninterrupted private time yet and they're supposed to get engaged always like boggles my mind. So I can't even begin to imagine the pressure on these hours to like check every box, have every conversation, dot the I's, cross the T's. Rachael is, of course, going to continue to get closer to Matt as well. She's going to get the same, uninterrupted time, fantasy suite treatment.
Every time I see you, I can't breathe. Feels like my heart is gonna explode. I don't think I could have asked for a better experience.
So, Rachael, I think, Matt has said that he is falling for her. And obviously, she's, said that back. They're a little bit, just a step ahead, I would say, at least in my opinion, of the other two relationships. Spoilers have creeped their way into everyone's minds this season. But based on what we're seeing here, we've seen their connection. It seems like it's just going to continue to take it to the next level. I can't imagine anything is going to go wrong on their fantasy date. What about you, Heba?
Yeah, it kind of seems a little inevitable, especially with the media that we've been hearing, especially with spoilers on the internet, on Twitter, on podcasts and stuff like that, blogs, all of that. So it seems pretty like it's gonna head in that direction. So nothing really surprising or shocking or any twist that's gonna be up ahead. But yeah, I mean, it seems like the connection is very solid. They're reciprocating a lot, and it seems like, yeah, just based off that clip, I mean, they're on the bed. I mean, they're having a good time, it seems like. So definitely not questioning it there. But yeah, again, it seemed like inevitable that she would make it maybe to the final two and then to the end. So I'm not really surprised that we're seeing this connection, and we'll talk a little bit later about how she is reacting to all the other girls, getting their fantasy suite chance. But yeah, it seemed, just nothing really surprising to me, honestly.
Yeah, the same. I mean, Rachael literally since day one has been a absolute front runner and just like so on the top of Matt's mind. And it seems like it's clearly still happening here. So, I mean, all the fireworks, it looks like it's going to be very romantic and just the perfect setting to keep falling in love. I think they're the ones that had a really big head start. So, if anything, they're just going to be digging deeper during this date. And it's going to be tough though, because this is the time when, like you were saying, Hiba, these girls are getting jealous or getting nervous or having doubts. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens, girl on the girls' side, but also with Matt and him trying to make this decision.
Yeah, I mean, you both touched on this. In this next clip, it looks like Rachel's going to be having like a very hard time. Every season, it feels like there's someone who's hit the hardest with the fact that, the person they love is going to be spending very intimate time with other people. And this season, it is definitely Rachael. She looks like she's going to be struggling to process that for sure.
I'm in love with Matt, and he's with another woman right now. This is torture. I can't do this anymore.
So I think, talk about cliffhanger, final, teaser, whatever. Like, what is that? I can't do this anymore. Is that her being dramatic, or is that, a potential clue that Rachael is going to not be able to get over the fact that somebody she loves is, in love with other women as well, and potentially send herself home this late in the game, or threaten to? Is that what you think might happen, Gabby? How real of a statement is that?
I don't know. I'm going to have to go with the dramatic side. She calls it torture, right? And I truly believe that this is torture. I don't know who would want to put themselves in this situation, but here they are. And they're obviously like good times are on the horizon, right? So if Matt truly loves Rachael or any of the girls, they're obviously holding on to the fact that that would be the case. And then they leave engaged and everything's happily ever after. So, of course, They have to get through some of these tough steps in order to get there. But I do think in the end, Rachel's going to realize that it's worth it and stick it out because she's so close to the end. But I don't know. I really think the other women as well, Brie and Michelle, are going to be echoing these same statements about being concerned there are other women because how could you not, right?
Right, exactly. There's no doubt about it. I mean, how could you not feel uncomfortable that other women are going to spend potentially a night doing who knows what with your potential fiance in the future? So I think, yeah, it's always going to be an uncomfortable conversation, an uncomfortable situation to be in this point of the season. And I was actually surprised that Rachel is the one kind of getting very emotional about this stage in the process. I thought maybe it would be Michelle because remember early on in the season, Michelle kind of had her second doubts of how well her date went and having trouble realizing that other girls are now going on dates with Matt too. So now that we're kind of past the dating scene and we're now into like the intimate part, I kind of expected Michelle to be a little bit more concerned versus Rachel because I feel like Rachel and Matt had such a solid relationship from the beginning, like we previously discussed. So I didn't
Mhm.
think this would kind of waver her or shake her. So that was interesting to see. And I feel like we haven't really seen Rachel break like this. I don't think we've ever seen her cry. Definitely Brie, we've seen her cry, sharing her story with her family, and Michelle, of course, but not necessarily Rachel. So maybe this was just her time to maybe show some emotion. Maybe this was her breaking point. You never know. She's been keeping it together for so long. And we know this season in general, this process is such a big toll on your mental health as well. So maybe this could have been a breaking point for her. And it makes sense because I mean, this is, you're so close to the end. It's all kind of, going to be a reality later on. So, yes, this will be definitely a dramatic point, I think, of the episode.
Yeah, I totally agree with both of you. And obviously, we haven't seen in this promo the other women having some doubts at this stage of the game, but I feel like this is a very trying week on everyone, including Matt. We're gonna see Matt have some doubts next week as well.
Still a lot of fear based on what I've seen in my family in the past.
So still a lot of fear, based on his parents' relationship. This is a crazy, crazy experience. And I do think that there is something to be said about people sign on for this thinking they're totally ready. And then it's just one thing after another. You're getting through these crazy dates, you're doing rose ceremonies, and then it hits you. You're supposed to commit your life to someone. It can be a bit of a wake up call at this stage of the game. I don't know about you, Gabby, but I wasn't really expecting Matt to waver at this point. I felt like he's been pretty solid in his confidence the whole way through, but maybe I'm wrong. How have you been feeling?
He has seemed confident for most of the season. I think it was the first episode when we saw most of his doubts and insecurities when he was just talking about his fears for what would happen while on the show. But I think now that it's just so close to an engagement, which is huge, that he's thinking really long term about the future, right? So he was probably thinking about his parents who were in love at one point, obviously, had him, and things got rocky after that and went south. So he's wondering, I obviously he doesn't want that to happen to him. So I think he's just really trying to think through all the possible scenarios in order to make this decision and, not just think about tomorrow, but the very far out future as well.
I think this will be a really interesting point in the episode to kind of look at Matt's journey and see him connect back to his family roots and getting in touch with his parents and kind of not trying to emulate what he went through and how he was raised in the relationship that he saw growing up with his parents. So I think this is a really good move on his part to kind of, learn from, I guess you can say, the mistakes that his family made in the past and not and try to avoid them in his own life. And I mean, that's going to be a very intimate part for us to see and for us to witness that conversation. It's probably going to be very emotional as well, as we'll talk about a little bit later on. But I think this will just benefit him in general. I know the conversation will be difficult and uncomfortable at some points, but I think in the long run, this will just benefit him no matter who he ends up with.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to see Matt having a very emotional conversation with his estranged father, something that I have to say I was not expecting to see at all.
Same.
When I needed you, you weren't there.
Do you know what I went through with your mom?
I don't want you to make excuses.
Nobody's perfect, son.
I don't want to make those same mistakes that caused my family to be torn apart.
So I just can't get over, I mean, to have that that pivotal, I mean, of a conversation. I obviously don't know Matt's entire life story. I don't know if they've had conversations like this in the past. We don't know if this was something he requested or something, the show arranged and surprised him with. But this can be a very powerful conversation that could definitely, I would say, have an impact on what he does next. What do you think, Gabby?
That's a good point. I am also wondering if he had his parents come in or if the show had him come in, because he's one of the few things that we really know about Matt and his family and his past is that his mom raised him and, his dad wasn't around, which we're seeing happen here in this conversation too. So, I mean, besides the fact that he's just kind of in this whirlwind of trying to find a fiance, which comes with so much, craziness and mental capacity and just like tough times, besides the fact that he's dealing with that right now he's having to like talk with his father and bring up some probably fast family issues that are just going to add even more to his plate, I feel like. So I'm hoping that this conversation ends up being positive or allowing Matt to open his eyes a little bit about whatever is on his mind or in the situation at this point, or what they're playing in the promo. It looks very negative, but hopefully, it comes out of it being a little bit better. I don't know.
I think this is maybe something Matt wanted to do to finally get the stamp of approval from his father and his mother. I think, again, a parent's approval means everything. And I think he wanted to go into this engagement knowing he did whatever he could to patch things up with his father or get approval from his father, that validation. And I feel like if he hadn't had done that, he would have had some sort of regret. And this is such a huge part in someone's life. I mean, to choose a life partner, to get engaged, and I feel like he would be kicking himself in the future if he didn't involve his father in that process. And again, yeah, like Fiona, you said, I did not expect this at all. I mean, watching the promo, I just thought maybe he talked to his mom and then there would be more dramatic scenes and cuts of him trying to make a decision, talking to Chris Harrison. But I did not expect his father to pop out of nowhere. But you know what? I'm happy to see that because it kind of gives us a different side of Matt as well. Shows us a different, basically his other parent that we haven't seen, that we've just heard about. And it seems like, his absent father was a huge part in Matt's childhood and him growing up. It had a huge effect on him. So for us to be able to see again this conversation, I think it'll be a big part again of this episode as well.
Totally. And we're not just going to be hearing from Matt's dad. We are also going to be once again hearing from his mom. I think we saw like a little pre-recorded clip of her earlier this season, but she's going to sit down with Matt and offer him some advice as well.
Feelings come and go. People fall in and out of love, and love is not the end all be all.
So she seems to be, I don't know, maybe on the skeptical side of this process. He's probably telling her that he's in love with 3 women, and she's saying love comes and goes. But that's a little bit of a tough lens, I think, to look at things through when you're about to be engaged. I think these conversations might really start to make the wheels turn in Matt's head about the fact that this has been a reality television show and these are major emotions and major commitments he's about to make. I mean, I would feel that way. What about you, Hiba?
I think his mom might have a different way of looking at love in general. They might have different kind of perceptions of this bachelor journey, about the idea of love in general. It seems like what she's saying, she seems more of like maybe she doesn't believe in soulmates or like that one person that's fit for you. She seems like she's saying you can be in love with multiple people, but it doesn't guarantee that one will be right for you. I don't even know what I'm saying, but it just seems like this is like a whole confusion of just like the concept of love. But she seems definitely like a skeptical person, especially, Bachelor, this process is so untraditional. It's so out there. And again, the odds of it working out, the statistics haven't been so great. So I understand where she's coming from. And again, parents will tell you like it is. And it doesn't matter if it's the mother or the father, they want to protect you no matter what. So I think, again, Matt is just going to have to take all these types of advice into account and just make the decision for himself. And again, he just has to hear all these different perspectives. And in the end, it's up to him to make the decision, even if he wants to make a decision or not, whether he wants to choose any of the 3 girls. So I think This is gonna be a difficult conversation. I think they might disagree here and there, but Matt's just gonna have to take whatever he gets from this conversation and apply it to his life and who he loves the most. Um, yeah, so this is gonna be an interesting part, I think. So, it's gonna go either left or right, but I have no idea what else she might say, but we'll have to definitely watch.
Yeah, I agree. I think that I'm sure he's gonna have a much longer conversation with his mom. Of course, we only got like a tiny little clip in this promo, which seemed very negative, as you were saying, Hiba. So I think overall, like I'm hoping and expecting that his mom's going to give him overall some just good life advice. Here is like a little bit of a warning, like it's not all about love. You really have to think about the logistics of marriage. But I think she's also going to be encouraging about if you really love this person, if you see a future with them, like go for it. So I think she's going to be supportive overall. Although you never know because we've had moms like Peter's mom, right, who absolutely hated the girl that he was falling in love with. So who knows in the end?
Who knows? It's truly going to be very interesting to see how this all plays out. Whether it's due to this conversation, with his mom or with his dad, or just something that's going on with the women, Matt really seems to think his plans are sort of crumbling out from under him.
I feel like everything that I was working towards is starting to crumble. I don't know how I go on. How do you go on from there?
So, one thing I just have to point out right away, because obviously we're breaking this down, we're doing our best to figure out what's happening when, what's coming next. It appears as though that black sweater Matt is wearing in some of those emotional clips would be perhaps the same sweater he wore during the conversation with his father. And, we're going to see that jacket pop up again a little later in the promo and another emotional moment with Chris Harrison. So, just throwing that out there. What do you think got him to this place, Gabby?
Well, at first, when we first saw some of these clips of Matt being emotional, I definitely thought another one of the women had sent herself home because that's the only other time we've seen him this emotional. But now that his father is in the picture and it seems like they have a very deep conversation, I really think it's something that happens during that makes Matt emotional, whether he's questioning his relationships, having doubts of wanting to go through with it, or if it's just like deeply rooted family issues that just hit him really hard. I think it's going to be surrounding his father, though, either way.
I'm gonna agree with you, Gabby. I think this definitely has to do with his dad, in connection to the black sweaters that you were talking about, Fiona. It seems like, you kind of have to piece those puzzles together, and what they wear, the wardrobe definitely gives it away. So I don't think this is related to any of the contestants, any of the women going home, or him talking to them and like walking out on a conversation with one of the girls. I think this is rooted with his dad and him maybe just having to step out, too much emotion, maybe painful memories, you never know what could have been discussed. So I think, yeah, this would be in connection with his dad. That's what I'm going to say.
Well, let's look again. We've seen a little bit of this before, but at that chat Matt has sitting on the curb with Chris Harrison wearing this outfit.
You okay?
No. No, I'm not.
I'm sorry, man. I'm very sorry.
Yeah.
Do you know if you can do this anymore?
To be honest with you, I don't know, Chris.
So, whatever got us here, that is our bachelor saying he's not sure he can, continue moving forward with the process. So there's a lot to kind of piece together. We saw him holding an engagement ring earlier, potentially having some doubts. Now he's saying he's not potentially sure, he can actually go through with the process in general anymore. So all of this is basically just to say this is not the ideal place to be in, right? At this phase, at this moment, I wanted him to be bouncing off the walls, so excited to start his new life. And it just doesn't feel like that's what the case is going to be next week. I mean, what do you think, Hiba?
Yeah, it's so hard to say because, again, you're near the end. All the emotions are rushing to you, especially when you have to make a decision in the next couple of weeks of who you want to spend the rest of your life with, potentially. And that's not an easy decision to make. You have to take into account every single experience you've had with each of those three girls, which one is better than the other. And you also have to take into account with the family as well. Like, who did you bond with the most? Who did you have better time with? So it's just all rushing to him, and it's no surprise that he's feeling this way, but as far as in what context, this conversation is being held after. It's just so hard to say because, again, he's wearing the same jacket, so I wanna say it's still connected to his father, but now Chris Harrison's saying, "Can you move forward with this?" So I don't know what his dad could say in order to make Matt think that he can't even finish out this season. So I really it's so hard to say, but I'm just gonna still think it's in relation to his father just based off of the wardrobe and him maybe walking out of that elevator, to the exterior of this building. Um, so I'm gonna stick with this being in the context of the discussion with his dad.
Yeah, definitely. I think since we're at the end of the season and he's so close to the finish line that everything is just piling on top of him, right? So he's probably just really overwhelmed with everything. And that probably came down to this breaking point moment for him. I mean, I can't imagine it. I can barely decide between like two shirts of what I'm going to wear today, let alone deciding between three amazing women to spend the rest of my life with. So I certainly wouldn't want to be in Matt's shoes here, and I can understand why he's feeling this way.
Yeah, it seems like, there's a lot of pressure, obviously, to make a decision that's going to impact the rest of his life in theory. He also, in making that decision, will have to really hurt two people who he obviously really cares about. And then, whatever the context of those conversations with his parents are, there's going to be an added family element. And he just may have been maxed out, right? His emotional tank here may have just been way overflowing and he needed a minute to recharge. I would like to say we end this promo seeing Matt in a great place, turning a corner, but they're leaving us off with Matt in a pretty sad place.
The drama continues.
So obviously the producers love to trick us with these promos. If you think about just however many clips ago, we were kicking things off with a lot of steamy romance. So I just want to get a temperature check from both of you. Are we going to see more tears than, romance next week? Are we going to actually see, really strong romantic connections and just a little bit of family, drama and emotions? What do you think next week is looking like, Hiba?
Ooh, I think we're gonna see definitely tears. I'm gonna go with the tears route. I mean, we saw it with Rachel, we saw it with Michelle, we saw it with basically everybody except Chris Harrison. But I think this part in the promo, I think it might be kind of in relation to the dramatic effect like we saw with Rachel breaking down. So I think that was a little bit more dramatized, exaggerated maybe a little bit. Maybe they told her to act it up, who knows? And then the same thing goes for Matt as well towards the end. I think him getting up and walking away from Chris was maybe a little bit scripted, I want to say, but again, I'm just speculating, or maybe again, it was just pure emotion that he was feeling in that given moment. But I still think tears will take the cake for me on this for next week's episode. I feel like it's going to be a roller coaster of emotion. I mean, Fantasy Suites will be the high, and then these conversations with his parents will be the low part. So it'll be interesting, and I'm definitely gonna buckle up.
I think it's going to be very much on the romance side, and that's what's going to lead to the tears by the end of the episode because there's so much love and so much connecting happening at the beginning of next week that it's just going to downward spiral basically.
Okay. All right. Well, I have to say, I could see 100 reasons why both of you would be completely correct because that is the genius of editing these trailers. Obviously, we are all dying to see what happens in Fantasy Suites. You guys, we want to know your predictions for next week, so let us know down in the comments. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell because we will keep you updated on all things Matt James. As always, I'm your host, Fiona Zaring. I was joined by the wonderful Gabby Ganta and Hiba Berry. If you want to come say hi, our social handles are on the screen right now. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye.